Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse sessions. I'm excited to have my new friend Sreedhar here with me, and I apologize if I got your name wrong. Please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then you and I are going to have a fabulous conversation about all kinds of fun founder stuff.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much, Jeff, for having me on the show. Glad to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Sreedhar Peddineni. That's a mouthful, I know. I'm currently founder and CEO of GTM Buddy. We are a revenue activation platform that looks at how do you enable and equip your revenue teams to sell better, sell more effectively. Prior to this, I have co-founded two other companies. My first company was founded in 2001, a company called Host Analytics, along with my partner, Jim Evelyn, in the areas of corporate performance management, that's budgeting, planning, financial consolidations. Built that between 2001 to 10. And in 2011, I had the opportunity to co-found my second company, again with Jim Evelyn, a company called Gainsight, in customer success space. My first company was acquired in 2017 by Vector Capital, and second company was acquired by Vista in 2020. And since 21, I'm building my third company, which is GTM Buddy, which I talked about.
I love it. Now, let's talk about your first two companies. And I'm fascinated because there's always some great nuggets in there. What were your big lessons with your first company that helped you as you went into your second company?
Yeah, the first company, at the time, I was based out of India, and it's in my late 20s. And those days in India, that was a fairly young age to become a startup founder, if you will. And I would consider a lot of my schooling to be the first company, that's Host Analytics, where working with customers and learning the art and craft of building startups, building products. I give a lot of credit to my early years, the foundational years between 2001 to 2005. That's a personal side of the story. So those were the days where software industry was generally, software was purchased on a CD, if you will. And,
I don't believe you. That sounds fictional. No, I'm kidding.
So you'd buy a CD or maybe a DVD at that, and you would buy a server where you would install that software, and you would get expensive consultants to implement that software and then roll it out. And by the time you spent, if you're a business, a larger business, you probably spent a few $100,000 to a few $1 million. That was the state of the union, the de facto state of the union in the 90s.
I love that. And for what it's worth, I have weird memories. I can't remember the year, but buying Microsoft Office on those 3 1/4 discs, and I think there was something like 100 of them, and you had to sit there and watch as that little clock.
Yeah. So back in those days, this was early days of software as a service. People who are as old as I am would recall that. But there were two things happening in 2000, 2001 timeframes. You had the .com, the rise of internet. Internet was becoming ubiquitous in terms of general usage by people. And the search engines were rising. There was a .com bubble that built up. There was Y2K happening, the year 2000 thing, for people who remember that. There was this software should not be bought, but it should be rented. The early notions of software as a service, subscription-based software delivery model was in the very nascent stages. So that's when I got into the industry of software industry, building my first company. We're talking about the founder stories. I'm not trying to be salesy here or talking about the company, but the landscape of what I was getting into, how the world looked like, which is dramatically different from what we are seeing today. Right.
Well, just imagine, if somehow you could time travel and tell your younger self that, discs would disappear. I think you'd think it was crazy. I mean, it's amazing what has come of this. So let's pivot and talk about GTM Buddy, because I think my audience is going to be deeply interested in what you're seeing. So let's talk about the origins and why this company matters to you now, because I think I have a lot that I'd like to share on this topic, but I'm more interested in what you want to share.
Yeah. So yeah, if I may have your permission, I'd like to give a little bit of context on the career trajectory. I'll go faster with this. So felt that, the first change that I saw was moving from the on-premises software to subscription model. That the first 10 years of my journey was around that. And as that journey was coming to an end, I started seeing a world where we have got all of these customers in a subscription-based business. Customers sign up, and always the focus was on getting new customers. The GTM motions, the sales and marketing motions to get customers, right? But in a subscription business, we started seeing that, okay, there comes a time where in a given quarter or a month, your renewals are larger than your new business. You might be renewing $5 million worth of business in a quarter, and maybe your sales were about 5 million. And that's a point of inflection where beyond that, your renewal of install base of customers is always going to be larger. That's the context where my second company started, the ideation for the second company in terms of, hey, we're spending a lot of time in terms of acquiring customers, great, but we're not really paying attention to our existing customers. There's got to be a better world for this, right? So with that thought process, we started thinking about, what does the world look like where an organization is more proactive about their existing customers? Is it customer support? There were already support ticketing systems out there. Is it customer service? That's more of professional services, project management type of things. So that thinking led us to a notion that in a subscription-based business model, you acquire a customer once, and ideally, you're keeping that customer for the lifetime. And
I love that.
If you want to make that happen, we need to be proactive about keeping that customer. And that was the genesis of our thinking process around customer success. In terms of, in order to keep the customer for the lifetime, you need to care about them. You need to make sure that you're delivering value. You need to deliver success to the customers. Now, with that in mind, we started ideating and we came up with a product definition. And in 2011, we launched Gainsight, and which to my knowledge is the world's first company to have launched as a customer success platform. Okay.
I love that. And if we can dive into the numbers just for a second, because you happen to step into one of my obsessions, the rabbit holes I go down. In your experience, what's the relative cost of acquiring a new customer versus the value of keeping a customer? Because there's a whole bunch you just dropped like it's common sense, but I think a lot of people are always chasing the next client. And my obsession is, what if we just kept the ones we had and found ways to serve them better? So what's the math look like in that space? Because I'm going to guess you've done enough, you know the numbers.
Yeah. So one of the common metrics that you use in SaaS business is what's called CAC, customer acquisition cost, right? What this really means is that, let's say if you're generating $100 in recurring revenue from that customer, how many dollars did you spend to get that customer? Okay, so did you spend $200 to generate $100 worth of first year revenue? Which means that the payback period is going to be 2 years. In 2 years, they're going to give you $200, and the payback is 2, right? These CAC ratios is 2 years is the payback period. The CAC ratios can vary depending on how aggressively you're growing. You could be spending $3 for getting $1. That's a CAC ratio of 3, or $2 to $1, or $1 to $1. And if you're spending, let's say, 50 cents to generate a dollar of revenue, then you're doing pretty good. In any which case, the fundamental premise here is that we spend money to generate revenue. That's a given. And then you spend money to implement. If you're in B2B software, you spend money to implement and support, for which you may not be charging extra money for that. That's part and parcel of the game, right?
Yeah.
Now, in this model, let's say you spend $2 to generate $1 worth of revenue in first year. Let's say if the customer cancels at the end of the year, what does that mean? You're actually losing $1.
Yeah.
First time it seems like, okay, generated revenue. The numbers of $1 and $2 might make it simplistic. Let's say you generated a customer, you spent $2 million to generate $1 million worth of revenue.
Yeah.
And let's say at the end of the year, all of the install base has cancelled, or 50% of the install base has cancelled. The million has become $500,000. But your spend is still $2 million. Right? So you start looking at the math. In order to generate the revenue or get the money back, you need to keep the longer you keep the customer, the more profitable your business is going to be. That's where the SaaS economics come into play, where companies that are able to keep their customers, which is measured with a term called net dollar retention, NDR, is mission critical for the valuation of the business. A company that has upwards of $100, 100% of net dollar retention is valued higher compared to a company that has, let's say, 80% or 90% net dollar retention. That drives the value of your business.
And honestly, a lot of people miss that basic math. I think it was Dan Kennedy, I first remember reading, he said, whoever can afford to spend the most to acquire a customer will win. And I think part of that, and again, I'm fascinated. I hate waste. I hate inefficiency. It's like, I'm going to spend all of this money acquiring a customer and losing them right away. Again, back in the early days of SaaS, I remember when one of my clients was excited because they got their monthly churn less than 30%. I'm like, that's terrible. Because literally every year you're replacing your entire client base over the averages. It just, to me, it felt like that's something worth fixing.
Yep, it's very, very expensive and often fatal to most businesses, right? So in this world, when we launched the customer success, to cut the long story short, 2011, the notion of customer success was like very sparse. There was no profession called customer success. Very few companies, if any, had CSMs as part of their staffing. There was no job role. So went through that awareness education phase in the market in terms of trying to figure out who do we sell this to. We have a product, we're calling it customer success, but who is buying it? Is it support team that's buying it? Is it professional services? Is it the revenue team? Who is buying it? That required a lot of category awareness and education. And that's where, as mentioned to you prior to this call getting recorded, it took a village to build out a company like Gainsight. We had raised our capital from Battery Ventures in 2013. And the current CEO of, or the then CEO of Gainsight, Nick Mehta came on board. There are a lot of great people that joined the company. It was a movement around creating awareness around customer success. Right. The next 10 years, we built it out. And we saw companies like very large enterprises like Cisco, Adobe, GE, companies like that. And in multi-million dollar contracts and so on, that eventually led to the company getting acquired in 2020 by Vista in a $1.2 billion transaction. And along the way, my first company, Host Analytics, was later rebranded to Planful, and it was acquired in 2017. Both of these companies are among the market leaders in their respective categories. And this was a setting when I started my third company, my current company, which is GTM Buddy.
Love it. Well, let's talk about GTM Buddy, because I think, so first and foremost, I want to point out I'm seeing a lot of really young, really confident, I'm a GTM expert. I don't believe them. You've got enough gray hair. I believe you. So let's talk about, first and foremost, to the listeners, what does GTM or go-to-market actually mean? Not what the, I call them the tech bros on LinkedIn claim it is, but what is it actually?
Yeah. So GTM is broadly all things revenue. What's the series of activities that happen in order to find and generate your pipeline of opportunities, prospects, if you will, who could be buying your product or service? And how do you generate interest, and how do you capture that demand or the interest, convert that into revenue, And how do you keep that revenue in through your customer success motions and get them to renew? There are a lot of functions. The key functions includes your marketing, the business development, say SDR, BDR function. You have account executives, you have pre-sales, depending on the type of solution that you sell. Then you have professional services and customer success coming into play. Broadly, all of these functions together constitute the GTM functions. Right. Now, in this GTM motion, if you will, the elements of like the more complex your product or service is, by complex, I mean more expensive product or service that you're offering, it becomes less of, it becomes more and more of an intentional purchase, intentional evaluation. It's less ad hoc, if you will. Right. So if you're buying something which costs you $10, you might just feel like getting it, and it's a very discretionary purchase. Right. But the more expensive purchases, especially at the businesses, there's this notion of buying team coming into play. Right. The buying team includes of multiple people representing multiple functions that evaluate your product or service and eventually come to a decision. There's lots of data around the complexity of the buying process is growing phenomenally. And most companies lose to not to the competitor, to another vendor, but they lose to the status quo. Because the more people in a room, it becomes harder and harder to get to a decision.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, I'm actually obsessed with the micro details of decisions because, again, I meet a lot of vendors who step into the conversation and say, okay, they're evaluating vendors. Here's how we stand out.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that is way down the road. You've got to first identify, do they actually want to move? And I'm fascinated when I see organizations completely ignoring status quo and the cost of transition. And honestly, if you do that, how do you ever get somebody from, because status quo may not be the best and ideal situation, but it's comfortable and they know it, rather than, okay, come to me and try something new and let's hope your life gets better.
Yep. Yep. And that's easier said than done. Yeah. So in your own words, you're talking about, one is status quo is always the preferred thing. I don't need to do that. The risk perception is lower. Yeah, we are where we were, as opposed to change. Change is always causes some discomfort.
Yeah.
And what's the cost of inaction? We need to convince the buyer in terms of, okay, why change? Why change now? Why change with me? Not another competing solution. There are multiple things that we expect our sales team to convince the buyer on. And understandably so, companies invest a lot of money in equipping or enabling these reps. Historically, there have been there's a function called revenue enablement at many companies.
Yeah.
Revenue enablement includes, we are hiring people and we give them, put them through a boot camp of training. So there's LMS systems that we buy, learning management systems. We put them through the courses. We're going to certify them at the end of that. Then I would give them access to content, if you will. All my product decks and sales decks, sales collateral, competitive battle cards, and so on. And I give them a pipeline. Or I ask them to build their own pipe, whichever the case may be. Now they're expected to internalize all of this information and get it to the action when I'm engaging with this buying team, where the status quo is that they're working based off of spreadsheets. I'm trying to sell them a financial planning software.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do I convince them to say that, okay, spreadsheets or building your financial models on spreadsheets is broken, and this is why. And what's the cost of not moving from spreadsheets? Then me selling my solution for the moment, let's say I'm still with Host Analytics. You buy Host Analytics software for this, for your planning, right? I need to make all of this happen. Now, what we do at GTM Buddy is about, okay, people forget things. That's a universal fact. The forgetting curve starts kicking in.
Yeah.
And whatever I learned in the LMS courses as part of my onboarding, I've forgotten that. 80% of that is forgotten within 30
Minutes.
Yeah, it is. I'm being generous at that, right? And then the content, I don't have time to look at 1,000 pieces of content. I looked at a case study, I looked at some sales tag, and I downloaded it to my laptop, and I'm comfortable with that. I keep using it. My company might have changed its positioning. New products might have been launched. I'm blissfully unaware. I don't care. I've practiced my pitch with a few pieces of content that's living on my laptop. That's what the de facto state of the reps are. You know, I've practiced and I'm downloaded and I'm self-sufficient. I'm working my deals.
Yeah.
That introduces a lot of risk for the business in terms of, the outdated messaging is all over the place. Depending on who you talk to at the company, it's going to be different. That the talk track is going to be different. Messaging is going to be different and so on. In order to address that, what we do is we try to help the rep with the right information delivered at the right time in the rep's workflow. So for example, I'm getting onto a meeting. I'm in my calendar, joining this Zoom meeting. We deliver information around, hey, this is who you are meeting with. This is what you should know about that person and the company that the person works for. And this is a discovery call. Here is what you're supposed to be asking. And here is the type of content that would resonate with them that you can send right after this call.
I love that.
Yeah.
And if I may, I'm a huge fan of James Clear in his book Atomic Habits. One of my favorite quotes is, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And I think that's the fundamental challenge when you look at really successful business development or salespeople. They have a system, whether they know it or not. And equally, the lowest performing salespeople also have a system. It just happens to be a bad system. So what I'm hearing and what you're doing is that you're aiming to help the salespeople all follow the same system, because, again, funny thing, you can have 20 people in a room taking a training and they'll walk away with 20 interpretations of what tomorrow's first thing activity looks like.
Yep. 100% right. Yep. How do you drive, there's this ambition or desire in the sales organizations in terms of, there's the 80-20 rule that applies everywhere. My top 20% of the reps produce 80% of the outcomes. They're crushing their quotas and so on, right? How do I level up my rest of the sales organization, sales team members to level up? How do I replicate the success of my best salespeople with others?
Yeah.
And part of that, an unsaid need there, is how do I drive consistency on the sales process? How do I drive consistency on something as simple as, what's my company's elevator pitch? What's my company's stance in terms of building a rapport in a conversation? And how do I define rapport? Is it about exchanging pleasantries, or is building a rapport based on I understand you as a professional and why you are taking this call with me, right?
Yeah.
How do I deal with objections? Is there a consistency along the way, right? So this is where the notion of revenue activation that we focus on. I take in all of your organizational best practices and content knowledge and activate it in the revenues workflow. And how do we unlock the capacity that exists? A lot of companies are looking at, okay, I want my revenue numbers to go up. The way to do it is I'll hire more people. But the unfortunate reality is that the revenue numbers are going up, and there's a pressure to do more with less, especially in this era, AI era. There is a consistent pressure to do more with less. Now, how do I make this happen? If I'm able to unblock the rep from doing unproductive things, I unlock some part of the time. But if I'm able to get the rep to do the right things at the right time, I can get the deals to move faster. A rep, instead of handling 20 deals opportunities at a time, can handle 30 opportunities at a time. Because tech and AI is here to help as a co-pilot. It's not a question of AI replacing the humans, but AI helping the human to be far more effective.
I love that. And that's kind of my bias. So there's a couple things I want to rewind because I think they're very, very critical. I live in a world, and by the way, I've been told that some of my views of reality are questionable, but if I look at my existing sales team, I consider them a sunk cost, more or less. Why wouldn't I want to see if I could get an extra 10% out of each of them? So again, if I can build systems that do that, the wins are bigger than if I go and hire, if I'm always churning through. Because one of the things I've seen in the sales space is, if you don't meet quota 2 quarters in a row, you're gone. And it's like, but nobody taught them the habits or the system to succeed. And the other piece I'm fascinated by, I have a belief, and I feel like you're probably uniquely qualified to answer this. If we truly understand our customers and we understand how they think and how they act, we can proactively, I hate to say the phrase overcome objections, but if we know who our customers are, we can refine our marketing and sales to preempt those objections and bring them to light early. Is that fair?
I love that. I love that. These are things that were not possible, let's say, 5 years ago when I was building Gainsight. Today, what we do in GTM Buddy is we look at hundreds of conversations that are happening in the sales organization, and we can synthesize all of that calls and extract out the objections that, in buyer's words, here are the questions that are getting asked. We can compare notes with what's there or the objection handling guide that's used internally, identify the gaps, and recommend, okay, here are the new objections that are coming through. Yeah. Now, while I'm mentioning GTM Buddy here, you could very well do this in a Claude, if you will. You can download all of your transcripts and methodically work through them leveraging AI. That's a huge unlock that's coming in. That's it. That's right there in front of us. You don't need to buy GTM Buddy for that. Use ChatGPT, use Claude, and figure out the way to use the projects construct or whichever one, or build a skill for this.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you something. You and I are going to have more conversations on this. Years ago, I was business development for a software company. And I was uniquely qualified because I understood their audience better than they did. But they thought I was, quote unquote, wasting time when I spent a day sitting with their tech support people, listening to what came through. And this was, I don't know how long ago, it was at least 10, it was definitely before AI. So probably about 10 years ago. I just look at the silos, over here we got customer support, over here we got tech support, over here we got marketing, over here we have sales. What if all of those functions shared? I look at it like a dossier. The better you know your customer, the better you serve them across the board. Is that sort of what you're doing with GTM Buddy at a high level?
Absolutely. So it's I think it's larger than GTM Buddy itself. It's about what's possible today. GTM Buddy is one way of doing it. Want to be objective about this and not too self-promotional.
You're allowed.
At the end of the day, we are talking about organizational knowledge that exists in different places. The first unlock is going to be like, how do I get a chat-based interface? Like I'm talking about level 1 that you want to get to. How do I get my organizational knowledge and unlock it in the same way to everybody in the company? I could be in support, I could be in sales, I could be in professional services, regardless. How do I get them access to the same set of information? A lot of problems like this is a problem that you could solve again with multiple tools. But where I see organizations not spending enough time is about paying attention to the cleanliness of the data. we are more interested, organizations are more interested in terms of, okay, there's FOMO around AI. So I'm more interested in terms of, okay, what's that bright, shiny toy that I want to bring in? And one of the toys being GTM Buddy there. But the real need is like the organizational hygiene on the knowledge, the content that is supporting this motion. If that is maintained, then you're powering all AI, including GTM, would become that much more effective. Chat GPT would become that much more effective. And we get to that end state that you have described, where whether you're talking about a BDR or a customer support person, they can get the exact same answer to the same question.
Yeah. And get the actual question that the customers are already using. Like it just to me seems like a win across all fronts.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it fascinates me, and I hope that we're coming into this era where companies are starting to break these artificial barriers, because yes, AI can do a lot of great things, and it has been done creating a lot of great things. But if you're not using it to understand your clients better, you're missing a golden opportunity. And again, you have my permission to promote GTM Buddy, but the reality is, if you've got data and you're ignoring it, you need to figure out how to use or find that data, because it's your clients will tell you exactly what they need if you're just willing to listen.
Yep. So we as organizations, we are generating a lot of data every single minute across the board. Be it support tickets, be it call transcripts, the CRM records getting updated, emails getting sent out, sitting on this data gold mine. Now, the challenge has always been that all of this data lives in silos. And with AI native tools like GTM Buddy and a few others, there is an opportunity to unify all of these systems. We can leverage AI to extract what's happening in the field. What are the questions that customers are asking? How do I bubble it up to the sales teams, to the revenue teams, to the support person, if you will? How do I get the latest and greatest answer to them? That AI becomes that connective tissue of connecting various different silos. That's where the MCP servers are growing in importance. Earlier, getting the systems to talk to each other used to be a bigger technical problem, because there are APIs. Some systems don't even have APIs. But when you have APIs, then you build instrumentation to build data, pull data, integrate systems. Now with MCPs, the job is becoming trivial. All of these developments are like last 2 years, 3 years, the world has changed. And this is a change like I've not seen a change like this before in my life.
Yeah. And probably won't. I mean, I would argue we've seen more change in the last decade than we have in the 200,000 years of human existence. Now, I could talk to you about go-to-market all day, because I'm fascinated. And for what it's worth, I get a lot of pushback when I sit down with my clients, and I want to talk about their existing clients. And like, no, we want to grow. And I'm like, yes, but we need the foundation, because if you don't have a good customer success project or team, I can bring you clients all day long, but we're both going to hate it after a while, because you just bring them in to watch them go out the other door.
Yep.
Awesome. Now, where can people go? So first of all, who should be looking at using GTM Buddy? What sort of size, what sort of industry? And then where can they go to learn more about either you or GTM Buddy?
Yeah. So a typical ICP is organizations that start at the lower end, anywhere between 30 to 40 people in their GTM organization, going up all the way to 3,000 people. That's the range at which we operate. When I'm talking about GTM, I'm including the SDR, BDR teams, and account executives, the solution consultants, and the CSM. I'm including all of that. So that's one. Yeah. And two, by nature of it, the organization is selling something that's technically more complex, if you will. There's a complex sales environment is another ideal fit. this is not trivial, where it's not a discretionary purchase where people are coming into the website and Amazon style or an e-commerce purchase where I put in my credit card and purchase and stuff. There's sales motion involved, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Typically, we are focused right now in terms of our ICP, we are focused on the technology industry, but we're seeing the uptick in manufacturing, complex manufacturing, as well as financial services and so on.
I love that. And honestly, I kind of get the sense if your customers are worth keeping, you should be talking to you guys about how to keep them and find new ones. Is that a good statement?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you can find more information about us on our website, gtmbuddy.ai. I'm on LinkedIn, Sreedhar Peddineni. You'll be able to find me on either of those channels.
Awesome. And as always, I tag you in the show notes so they'll find you. Sreedhar, I want to thank you for hanging out with me because it's amazing how little I get to talk to people about GTM. Usually we get into specifics of, just sales or just marketing. And I see it as I'm obsessed with customer journey. So you and I are going to have more conversations. I want to thank you for taking your time and being on the show with me today.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciate it, and talk soon.